I think it was the POCO F2 Pro when we first saw POCO release the Pro version of its popular POCO F series. It's been a while since then, as the F5 Pro is the only second time they did. So knowing POCO, who strives to provide the best features at such a low price in this segment, there's no telling whether there's going to be a POCO F6 Pro or just the POCO F6, because the price has to be right for their target customers. Otherwise, they're going to be just one of the other brands. But I do have some interesting findings with this phone. A lot of them are good, but some are a bit disappointing, considering that this is a Pro phone and should be better than the non-Pro F5 in some ways. So from a design standpoint, this POCO F5 Pro in white isn't as interesting as the F5's white version. Here, all you get is a clean, glossy surface. In a way, it's kind of following the footsteps of other brands wherein they release boring, standard colors for their flagship lineup, which is a bit of a bummer. However, despite the plastic railing, I do like the camera layout here, appearing as if it's a visor with its metallic finish on the side. Although it's a little funny to see POCO trying to imitate a periscope or zoom lens with this macro lens. Nice try, POCO, but overall I don't mind this clean and simple look, especially for those people who will definitely put a case on this one. But before you do, this is the first POCO phone with actually a wireless charging feature. So the glass backing here now lets the phone charge wireless of up to 30 watts. Unlike Infinix Note 30 VIP though, it doesn't come with a free wireless charger and there's no reverse wireless charging, which is kind of weird. Either way, you finally have that feature here and it's nice to see. The other weird thing is that the stereo speaker isn't much any better than the F5 and even the earliest F-series phones. As I've said in the past videos, this has been a trend since POCO F3, but overall, it's still good enough. It's loud and clear, but on the thinnest side due to the weak bass. Oh, and you also lose the headphone jack here, whereas the F5 has it. This phone is definitely heavier and slightly thicker than the F5 considering the things I've mentioned, and there's going to be some adjusting if you're coming from a thinner and lighter device, but it's still good to see dust and water splash resistance here. I don't expect the next iteration to fully be submersible in water. I would give them 2 to 3 years before they add that feature. The haptic feedback is on the solid side, but definitely has room for improvement as it's not as strong as I would like for a Pro phone. But I wasn't disappointed with the in-screen fingerprint scanner. I have both of my thumbs registered, and I think I only struggled to go past the lock screen for about 1 or 2 times. The unlocking speed is the fastest I've seen by far, although you can still use it even when the screen is off. You would have to memorize the location of the fingerprint scanner. Another first for the POCO F series, which makes this phone Pro, is the 1440p display. In addition to that, there's a 120Hz refresh rate, not LTPO, HDR Dolby Vision support, and it's an AMOLED panel that supports 6 to 8 billion colors and 1400 nits of peak brightness in HDR mode. There are a lot of features that come with this panel, such as AI enhancements. They even added a way for you to upscale videos that are in 720p resolution and below. However, I found all these features gimmicky as I hardly see any difference when they are turned on. But what's unfortunately missing here that's on the POCO F5 is the ability to force 120Hz on apps like YouTube and Netflix. But outside those gimmicks, this is yet again one of, if not the sharpest and brightest displays in the segment. But if we're talking about performance, I don't think there's a phone out right now that's as fast or as powerful as the F5 Pro, considering the overall package you get. So it has Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 with up to 12GB of RAM and up to 512GB of storage. This is slightly clocked higher than the Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 on the POCO F5 in both CPU and GPU. In a way, it's kinda like the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 or Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 2, if that makes sense. If not, well, what you only need to know is that there's no stark difference in day-to-day performance and even extreme gaming performance between the two chipsets. But because this is a very fast chipset, it's easier to see the faults in other parts of the device. So I'm on Android 13 with MIUI 14 on top, and the unlock animation is most of the time stuttery and jittery. It looks really bad at times that you would think that the phone is lagging. When I swipe up from the bottom, more often than not, it recognizes my swipe as a regular swipe, so it does a different action than what I intended it to do. It actually became annoying, to the point where I almost switched to using the old screen on-screen navigation. And then in the camera, there is HDR mode in 4K video. Typically, this should be automatic when recording a video, but for some reason, POCO made it a toggle, and as a result, the action of the recording itself is stuttery and laggy and just simply out of character for a phone with a formerly flagship chipset. In gaming, I've spent a lot of time playing Star Rail at the highest possible setting, and I have definitely pushed this phone to its thermal limits. The chip was sitting comfortably at 51 to 53 degrees Celsius, and I noticed my FPS dipping to 45 from 60 FPS almost consistently. But at high settings, although the temperature stayed the same, my FPS was hovering between 55 to 60 FPS most of the time. I know those numbers look high for a phone, but the surface temperature of this phone, this glass backing, didn't feel like it was hot to the touch. It was very warm at best. My fear is that POCO's cooling management is doing its job effectively. Although 50 degrees seem very high for a phone, maybe the threshold of this phone is just higher than the rest. But for a phone that's focused on performance, I don't expect it to be great in terms of camera. But since this is a Pro phone, I expect it to be very good at the very least. And for some specific parts, it's very good. Like when you're shooting in bright, strong sunlight conditions, especially with landscape or close-up subjects, the photos you get are really sharp, full of life, colorful, maybe a bit too colorful and too much contrast at times, but not something that would ruin an image. I did notice the camera leaning towards the warm tone most of the time, like this tree here isn't supposed to be yellow, but it made it yellow. The 8 megapixel ultra-wide looks good at a glance, but once you check the edges of the images, you see more and more noise in the image. But the photos you get on the 64 megapixel main camera or the main sensor are great, provided you're not shooting anything that has something to do with skin tones, because for some reason, whether it's a video or a photo, there's some kind of filter applied to the skin tones that make the faces of people you capture look yellow or green. And that's not really appealing, at least not to me. I think a software update could fix it, but this is POCO, so fingers crossed. The videos though look exceptionally great in 4K. That OIS is really helping the footage appear extra sharp and stable, to the point where the panning and movements I usually do with a gimbal are almost as good as shooting handheld with this phone. That's how great the stabilization here is. You can record up to 8K at 24 frames, although not natively, and there's a slight crop, but I don't think you need it considering how great looking 4K is already. Unfortunately, the selfie camera is still stuck at 1080p at 60 FPS, but at least the photos you get are more than usable. I just wish the photos were a bit sharper and a bit more lively. But just like any non-flagship phone, the quality falls apart drastically in challenging conditions. In photos, when you're not in night mode, you will lose a lot of detail and colors. In videos, it's the same story, but there's a lot of noise that it's kind of hard to watch on a big screen like a monitor or a tablet. Outside the quality of the images, POCO has added a teleprompter feature in the camera settings, and comes quite handy if you need one. Saves you time and storage from searching from the Play Store. Then you have motion tracking in HDR10 plus video recording if you want to further improve the quality of your videos. And when you zoom and switch between the ultra-wide and wide sensors, it's now a smooth change instead of a quick jump. It's a small thing, but it's a nice touch. But overall, I would give this camera setup a B-. I like the daylight photos I get, but also I thought that low light could be better, especially those skin tones. They need to fix that as soon as possible. Oh, and battery? That 5160 mAh isn't enough for this powerhouse of a phone. Regardless of when I'm playing games or not, I consistently average 4 to 5 hours of screen time only. Kinda mediocre considering how MIUI is aggressively in killing background tasks. Maybe it's the chipset or maybe it's the extra display resolution, but yeah, you'll probably end up charging this phone before you hit bedtime. Luckily, there's wireless charging for you, and the 67-watt charger is still fast for topping up in just an hour. And if you're worried about dead boot issues from the past, POCO has mitigated that mistake before. They've extended warranties, they shouldn't have that issue now with their latest ones. That's basically my take on dead boot. But overall, despite the addition of wireless charging and the impressive OIS in videos, I'm still left a bit disappointed with this phone. The battery life isn't just enough for me, and the way the camera acts when recognizing skin tones and low light scenarios isn't just going to cut out for me, but for other users. Maybe you're not into that camera that much. The F5 Pro is still a solid pickup, but at this price range, there are people who are looking for really good and dependable cameras. So basically, that's the POCO F5 Pro after 2 months. Drop a sub or like if you feel like supporting the channel, and as always, until the next one, stay safe.